Representative Don Keefer calls up House Bill 1237 on page 8 of today's House calendar. This is on second consideration. The clerk will read a summary of the bill.
This bill amends the Regulatory Review Act to establish a process under which economically significant regulations must be approved by the House and the Senate before they go into effect.
And there are quite a few amendments on this. First of all, will the House agree to the bill? There are amendments being offered. I'm going to go in order. The first amendment is offered by Representative Bradford. It's Amendment 6482. The clerk will read a summary of that amendment.
Amendment A 06482.
6482 has been withdrawn. You know what? I'm sorry. I didn't see this. Hold on. You know, this is the order that I have for that we have, and keep in mind the leader and the speaker calls up the amendments. The amendment that we have that we're going to call up first is Amendment 6482. Withdrawn. The next would be Amendment 6484. Withdrawn. Amendment 6498 is Representative Markosik. Representative Markosik, withdrawn. Representative McCarter, Amendment 6651. Withdrawn. Representative Delicio offers Amendment 6658. Withdrawn. Representative Bradford calls up Amendment 6655. It raises the threshold to 10 million. Withdrawn. Representative Bradford, Amendment 6662. Raises the threshold to 20 million. Withdrawn. Representative Bradford, Amendment 6679. Withdrawn. Representative Bradford, Amendment 6513. Okay, Amendment 6513. The clerk will read a summary of Amendment 6513.
This is Amendment A 06513. Under the amendment, the net annual cost of a regulation, total cost minus societal benefits, would be used to determine whether a regulation is economically significant.
Will the House agree to the amendment? On the amendment, Representative Bradford.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 6513 realizes that the bill in question uses the term of art economically significant regulation, but it is my contention and many others that there are soft costs, there are societal benefits for certain regulations that a dynamic scoring like that proposed in this matter does not fully encompass. So this would allow for a societal benefits test to also be applied in determining what is a economically significant regulation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, sir. On the amendment, Representative Don Keefer on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask for a negative vote on this. While the benefits of the regulations should be taken into account, those paying the costs are different than those that are reaping the benefits. So the regulations will impose substantial costs on some segment of our society. That should still be the subject of extra scrutiny. So I would ask for a no vote on this.
And Representative Bradford for the second time on the amendment, no. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members, please proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? And the clerk will, no, I'm sorry, there's a few members that have not yet voted. Representative Marshko has requested to be placed on leave. Without objection, that will be granted. And the clerk will record the vote. The nays are 106, the yeas are 71. The amendment does not pass. And Representative Bradford, 6508, Amendment 6508. Withdrawn, Amendment 6537. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 6557. My apologies, 6557. Withdrawn, Amendment 6562. Withdrawn. Representative McCarter, Amendment 6677. It's a threshold calculation, excludes indirect costs on government and private sector. It's Amendment 6677. Okay, I'm sorry, that's who, is it Representative Bradford? Okay, Representative Bradford withdraws 6677. Representative Committa, Amendment 6510. 6510. Yes, okay, the clerk will read a summary of Amendment 6510. Will the House agree to the amendment? The clerk will read a summary of the amendment.
Amendment A 06510 exempts from the economically significant regulation concurrent resolution process regulations that protect public health or the environment, or regulations containing only a fee or permit increase or stream designations.
Representative, will the House agree to the amendment? On the amendment, Representative Committa is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment exempts from concurrent resolution, Section 7.2, page 9, regulations only containing fee and permit increases, stream designations, or promulgated to protect public health or the environment.
On the amendment, Representative Dawn Keefer is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask the members for a no vote on this. This amendment runs completely counter to the intent by exempting categories of regulations from this added review.
All those in favor of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? And the clerk will have all the members voted. The clerk will record the vote. The nays are 99, the yeas are 78. The amendment does not pass. Representative Committa offers Amendment 6555. 6555. Yes, she's going to offer that, so please read us the summary of Amendment 6555.
Amendment A 06555. The amendment exempts regulations that pertain to environmental protection from the economically significant concurrent resolution process.
And Representative Committa, on the amendment, will the House agree to it? You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment ensures that environmental, wildlife, and human health is not compromised.
Representative Keefer, on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I would ask our members for a no vote on this. So the purpose of this bill is to subject costly amendments to the added scrutiny and to encourage agencies to minimize costs and impacts when developing regulations. This amendment runs completely counter to the intent of this bill. and the regulations and our added review that we're looking at. Thank you.
All those in favor of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members, please proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? No, I'm sorry, not all the members have voted. The clerk will record the vote. The nays are 97, the yeas are 80. The amendment does not pass. Representative Committa offers amendment 6563. The clerk will read a summary of that amendment.
Amendment A 06563. The amendment exempts regulations that pertain to food safety from the economically significant concurrent resolution process.
On the amendment, Representative Committa, you may proceed. Will the House agree to the amendment? Representative Committa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment ensures that public health is not compromised.
And Representative Keefer on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I would encourage our members to vote no on this amendment. It runs completely counter to the intent of the bill by exempting categories of regulations from the added review. Thank you.
Representative Lawrence on the amendment, sir. Representative Lawrence, I apologize, that microphone has not been working today. Yes, you may.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentlelady submit to a brief interrogation?
Yes, she will. Representative Committa, you wish to proceed?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You may proceed, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the term food safety, is that a defined term in this amendment?
No, it is not.
So with regard, as an example, in our neck of the woods, we have a number of mushroom growers. So, for example, with a regulation as it regards to wearing a hairnet as one walks through a mushroom growing facility, would that be a regulation that falls under the term food safety in this amendment?
That would be determined by the Department of Agriculture.
So it's not spelled out in this amendment. It would be up to a determination by either the Department of Agriculture or one of the other cabinet departments?
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the amendment?
You may proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the intent of this amendment, and I think it's timely given the concerns we see with the lettuce, E. coli with lettuce. What I would suggest, Mr. Speaker, is that the amendment is very broadly drafted. I would also suggest, Mr. Speaker, as it relates particularly with regard to the growing of mushrooms in the Commonwealth, we are already seeing, of all places, businesses going to Maryland because of, incredibly, this is difficult for me to believe, a better regulatory environment. So I would suggest, Mr. Speaker, that we vote against this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All those in favor of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? The clerk will record the vote. The nays are 98, the yeas are 79. The amendment fails. Representative Committa offers Amendment 6568. The clerk will read a summary of that amendment for us.
Amendment A 06568. The amendment exempts regulations that pertain to public health, safety, and security from the economically significant concurrent resolution process.
Okay, on the amendment, Representative Committa, you may proceed. Will the House agree to the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment ensures that the health and safety of the public is not compromised.
Representative Dawn Keefer on the amendment, please.
Again, I would ask our members to vote no on this. First of all, again, the amendment runs completely counter to the purpose of this bill. And second of all, because the emergency regulations are exempt from the provisions of this bill, the regulations needed to respond to health, safety, or security emergencies would not be impacted by this bill. So the amendment is not necessary. I would ask for a no vote. Thank you.
All those in favor of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? The clerk will record the vote. The nays are 99, the yeas are 78. The amendment fails. Representative Kruger-Branicki offers Amendment 6578. 6578. The clerk will read a summary of the amendment. Representative Pam Snyder has requested to be placed on leave. Without objection, that will be granted.
This amendment A 06578. The amendment exempts regulations that pertain to air quality and water quality from the economically significant concurrent resolution process.
And on the amendment, Representative Kruger-Branicki is recognized. Will the House agree to the amendment? You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment excludes from the definition of economically significant regulation those which pertain to air and water quality. The Pennsylvania State Constitution guarantees a right to clean air and clean water, and we believe that the health and safety of the public should not be compromised for any reason. In fact, our Constitution prohibits it.
Representative Dawn Keefer is recognized on the amendment.
Again, I would ask the members for a no vote on this. Runs counter to the intent of the bill. And again, the emergency regulations would be exempt from this bill, so any regulations needed to respond to air quality or emergencies would not be impacted by this bill. So it's an unnecessary amendment, and I would ask for a no vote. Thank you.
Representative Kruger-Branicki for the second time? No. Okay. All those in favor of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Yes, there is a member that needs to vote. And the clerk will record the... Have all the members voted? The clerk will record the vote. The nays are 96, the yeas are 80. The amendment does not pass. Representative DeLisio offers Amendment 6590. The clerk will read a summary of that amendment for us, please.
Amendment A 06590. The amendment exempts regulations that pertain to child safety and water quality from the economically significant concurrent resolution process.
On the amendment, will the House agree to the amendment? Representative DeLisio is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this amendment excludes from the definition of economically significant regulation those regulations which pertain to child safety. Mr. Speaker, I think the entire bill adds a level of complexity and a layer of bureaucracy to a system that already on many days has its own speed bumps for bureaucracy and complexity. Adding more of that on vis-a-vis this bill could endanger some of our most vulnerable citizens, our children. I think those regulations pertaining to children should indeed be exempt and not subjected to this additional bureaucracy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Do you want to go to that one? Representative Keefer on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I would encourage my members to vote no on this amendment. The term child safety is not even defined in this. And again, we will all have an opportunity to vote on something as it comes up piece by piece, each piece of legislation. This is not necessary. It runs counter to the intent of this bill, and I would encourage everyone to vote no. Thank you.
All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? And the clerk will record the vote. The nays are 99. The amendments are yeas 77. The amendment does not pass. Representative Markosik offers Amendment 6499. Representative Markosik, 6499. Withdrawn. Representative Bradford offers Amendment 6515. 6515. Withdrawn. And then Representative Bradford, 6542. Withdrawn. Okay, the clerk will read 6542.
This Amendment A06542. The amendment requires a two-thirds vote of a committee to disapprove an economically significant regulation.
And Representative Bradford, will the House agree to your amendment? And you may speak on the amendment.
Yes. Amendment 6542 ensures that a supermajority of the committee is in agreement about the adoption of any such regulation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All Representative Keefer on the amendment, please.
I would ask members to vote no on this amendment. It establishes that the IRC must disapprove regulations by a two-thirds vote by not the standing committee. So again, I would ask everyone to vote no.
All those in favor of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? The clerk will record the vote. The nays are 106. The yeas are 70. The amendment does not pass. Representative Bradford offers, no, excuse me, I apologize. Representative Mary Jo Daley offers 6549. The clerk will read a summary of 6549.
Amendment A06549. The amendment requires a two-thirds vote of both houses of the General Assembly to disapprove an economically significant regulation.
Representative Mary Jo Daley withdraws that amendment. Representative Kruger-Baneke offers Amendment 6684. The clerk will read a summary of that. 6684.
Amendment A06684. The bill requires an agency that promulgates an economically significant regulation to participate in a hearing on the regulation.
On the amendment, Representative Kruger-Brandeke is recognized. And will the House agree to the amendment? Representative Kruger-Brandeke, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment, if adopted, would dictate that the Independent Fiscal Office would only estimate costs to the Commonwealth. The agency would be required to appear at a hearing if requested to do so in writing. The written notification to appear at a public hearing shall be signed by both the majority chairperson and the minority chairperson of the committee. This gives the agencies that would be impacted by these regulations or the repeal of regulations a chance to testify if requested.
Representative Keefer on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask the members for a no vote on this. The regulatory process should be collaborative, and thus requiring the written invitation isn't necessary. Thank you.
All those in favor of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? The clerk will record the vote. The nays are 106, the yeas are 70, and the amendment is defeated. Representative Daley offers amendment 6853. Representative Daley, are you offering? I have it that you are, but amendment 6853. Yes, and the clerk will read a summary of Amendment 6853.
This is Amendment A 06853. When the Standing Committee holds a hearing on an economically significant regulation, the head of the agency promulgating the regulation must appear at the hearing to testify regarding the purpose and necessity of the proposed regulation.
Will the House agree to the amendment? On the amendment, Representative Mary Jo Daley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment removes, quote, if requested to do so by the chair of the committee, unquote, and adds, quote, and testify before the committee on the purpose of the proposed regulation and its necessity, unquote. And this would allow for greater agency input.
All those, Representative Dawn Keefer on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask members for a no vote on this amendment. A hearing is already required, so this amendment is not necessary.
All those in favor of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members, please proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? And the clerk will record the vote. The nays are 106, the yeas are 70. The amendment is defeated. Representative Bradford offers Amendment 6686. The clerk will read a summary of that amendment.
This is Amendment A 06686. No proxy voting would be permitted when a standing committee considers a concurrent resolution on an economically significant regulation.
On the amendment, will the House agree to it? Representative Bradford is recognized. Representative Godshaw has requested to be placed on leave. Without objection, that will be granted.
Yes, this is another transparency issue. This would require that any such approval or disapproval would take place at a regular meeting and would prohibit things like proxy voting and such that may be used at such a hearing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And Representative Keefer on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask members for a no vote on this amendment. Committee members give the chair their permission to cast a proxy vote and instructions for the vote. In this regard, the proxy vote is no different than an in-person vote. Thank you.
All those in favor of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? The clerk will record the vote. The nays are 105. The yeas are 70. The amendment is defeated. Members, just for your edification, on this bill we have 34 more amendments to go. I wondered if any of the makers of the amendments can tell us if any of the others are withdrawn. I do understand that these are withdrawn. Correct me if I'm wrong. Amendment 6480 is withdrawn. Amendment 6480 by Representative Bradford. I'm doing my best. Withdrawn. And Amendment 6692, Representative Bradford. Withdrawn. And Representative Kruger-Branicki, 6694. Withdrawn. And Representative Mary Jo Daley, Amendment 6817. Withdrawn. Okay, we're going to continue to go through these. If there's any others that can be withdrawn, please let me know. That's all I had that were listed. I was hoping there might be a few more. Amendment 6686, Representative Bradford offers that amendment. The clerk will read a summary of that amendment. 6686. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that defeated? Yep, that's defeated. I just wanted to remind everybody. Amendment 6698, Representative Bradford. That's what 6698 is withdrawn. 6724, Representative Bradford. Withdrawn. Representative Bradford, I have Amendment 6688. Yep. The clerk will read a summary of Amendment 6688.
This Amendment A06688. Regulations promulgated under the lottery law are excluded from the provision of the bill that establishes that a regulation is deemed withdrawn if the regulatory analysis form does not include a reference to a specific provision of the statute under which the specific regulation is anticipate and authorized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, you may proceed, Representative Bradford, on the amendment. Will the House agree to the amendment?
Under Amendment 6688, under this current law proposed Section 5.2, regulations deemed withdrawn, this would protect regulations that have been promulgated under the state lottery law. I think there's universal agreement that the lottery as currently dealt with in our regulatory system has had tremendous benefit for older Pennsylvanians, and I don't think this is probably the target of the gentlelady with her bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Keefer on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask members for a no vote on this amendment. I don't know why the Lottery Commission or the Department of Revenue would be able to promulgate regulations that are not explicitly authorized by statute. So I would ask for a no vote. Thank you.
All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? And the clerk will record the vote. The nays are 102, the yeas are 73. The amendment does not pass. Representative Mary Jo Daley offers Amendment 6689. The clerk will read a summary of that amendment.
This is Amendment A06689. Prohibits the withdrawal of regulations promulgated by an agency under its general authority conveyed by an act of the General Assembly.
On the amendment, Representative Daly is recognized. Will the House agree to her amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 6689 makes a concurrent resolution not in order if the regulations adopted by an agency were adopted and promulgated pursuant to sole and general authority conveyed to the agency by an act of the General Assembly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And on the amendment, Representative Keefer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask members for a no vote on this amendment. There are many situations where the agencies delay implementation of important statutes by promulgating unnecessary regulations that aren't explicitly authorized by statute. And this bill would prevent that from happening. I would ask for a no vote. Thank you.
All those in favor of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members, please proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? And the clerk will record the vote. The nays are 104, the yeas are 70. The amendment does not pass. It is defeated. Somebody tell Representative Kaufman is recognized on unanimous consent on the last amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I meant to be recorded in the negative. My button malfunctioned. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, sir. Representative McCarter offers Amendment 6691. The clerk will read a summary of 6691.
This Amendment A06691, deemed withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the Older Adult Protective Services Act.
And will the House agree to the amendment? Representative McCarter is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, there are many areas that are important. However, there is one area for those of us who are of an older age that realize as people get older and so forth, they need more protection than others. And that happens, and again, for many of us, in terms of our elder years when you get into health problems, or whether you're in nursing homes, or whether you're suffering from financial abuse, even being taken advantage of by your family members in many cases, and the senior fraud that exists. This particular change would, again, would exclude those areas dealing with the Older Adult Protective Services Act from new Section 5.3. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Did we roll in? On the amendment, Representative Keefer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I would ask members for a no vote on this amendment. Again, agencies promulgating unnecessary regulations that aren't explicitly in statute, this bill would prevent that from occurring. I would ask for a no vote. Thank you.
All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. And the clerk will record the vote. The nays are 99, the yeas are 75. The amendment does not pass. It fails. Representative Committa offers Amendment 6695, which the clerk will read.
This Amendment A06695, deemed withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the CHIP statute.
And Representative Committa is recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment excludes regulations adopted and promulgated under the Children's Health Care Act from the new Section 5.3 regulations deemed withdrawn.
Representative Keefer on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask members for a no vote on this amendment as well. Again, we're trying to prevent agencies from promulgating unnecessary regulations that aren't explicitly permitted through statute. And this bill would prevent that from occurring. I'm asking for a no vote. Thank you.
All those in favor will be voting aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? The clerk will record the vote. The nays are 96. The yeas are 77. The amendment is defeated. Representative John Mars on the House floor and should be placed back on the master roll. Representative Committa offers Amendment 6695. Oh, no, we just did that. Amendment 6697, Representative Bradford. (6697). Representative Bradford, actually the next 10 are yours. 6697, 6700, 6701, 6702, 6704, 6705, 6706, 6707, 6708, 6709, and 6713, 6714, 6715, and 6716 are all yours, and they're good. All of them are good to be offered, not good to be voted upon. That depends on the voter. So we'll start with Amendment 6697 offered by Representative Bradford.
This amendment A06697, deemed withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the insurance company law.
Representative Bradford on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I mentioned this earlier, but often regulations are easy to take a shot at, but regulations like in the area that this amendment hopes to protect, 6697, are about consumer protection and protecting from insurance companies that would override the rights of patients and the insured. This amendment would make sure that those regulations are not deemed withdrawn. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And Representative Keefer on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask members for a no vote on this. Again, we're trying to stop agencies from promulgating unnecessary regulations without specific statute authority. I'd ask for a no vote. Thank you.
All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. And the clerk will record the vote. The nays are 106, the yeas are 70. The amendment does not pass. Representative Bradford, Amendment 6700. The clerk will read a summary of that amendment.
This amendment A06698 authorizes an agency to seek review of a standing committee's decision to disapprove a regulation.
Representative Keefer on the amendment. Withdrawn. 6700. Okay, we did 6697 was defeated, and the next one is 6700.
Amendment A06700, deemed withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the Tax Reform Code.
Representative Bradford on 6700.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I previously mentioned, Amendment 6700, again, would hope to bring some certainty in our tax code. This obviously is to protect both taxpayers and the Commonwealth as a whole. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Keefer on Amendment 6700.
I would ask members for a no vote on this. This amendment eliminates an important provision of this bill. Again, we're trying to stop agencies from implementing or promulgating regulations not permitted by statute. Thank you.
All those in favor of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Just pick one of them. I'm telling you, you have to provide. And the clerk will record the vote. The nays are 106, the yeas are 70. The amendment fails. Representative Bradford calls up Amendment 6701. The clerk will read a summary of that amendment. It's withdrawn. Representative Bradford calls up Amendment 6702. The clerk will call up 6702, please.
This is Amendment A06702, dealing with withdrawals provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the Taxpayer Relief Act.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 6702.
The gentleman is recognized on the amendment. You may proceed. No, you may proceed. Yes, indeed, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 6702 provides taxpayers property tax relief under the Gaming Act. Again, I realize that some have a desire to target certain regulations, but if we're not careful, things like property taxpayers will be adversely affected, and this amendment would protect our gaming money to go to property tax relief here in Pennsylvania. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On the amendment, the chair recognizes the gentlelady, Representative Keefer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask members for a no vote on this amendment. Again, we're trying to keep agencies from promulgating regulations not authorized by statute. They get their powers from us. This bill would prevent this from happening, and this amendment is counterproductive. I ask for a no vote. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the minority whip, who asks that the gentleman, Mr. Reed, shall be placed on leave for the balance of the day. Without objection, that leave is granted. On the question, those in favor shall vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? The clerk will record the vote. The yeas are 69, the nays are 106. The amendment fails. Chair recognizes the gentleman, Representative Bradford, who calls up Amendment A06704, which the clerk shall read.
This is Amendment A06704. Dealing with withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the right to know law.
On that question, the chair recognizes the gentleman, Representative Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, under the law of unintended consequences, these regulations are what secures the right to know law in Pennsylvania and, again, protects transparency in government. For that reason, I ask for your support for this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair thanks the gentleman. On the question, recognizes the gentlelady, Representative Keefer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to pull in and rein in the power of unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats by putting the power back in the hands of the General Assembly and getting us to oversee what the actual intent of the law is, as opposed to some bureaucrat interpreting what our original intent was. This amendment specifically is counterproductive to the intent of this bill by not overseeing those regulators and not ensuring that those regulators are promulgating regulations that are permitted by statute. I'd ask again for a no vote. Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentlelady, and on the question, those in favor shall vote aye, those opposed nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? Clerk will record the vote. The yeas are 70, the nays are 105. The amendment fails. The chair recognizes the gentleman Representative Keefer, who seeks recognition under unanimous consent. Without objection, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Amendment 6695, my vote was not registered. I'd like to be in the negative. Thank you.
The gentleman's remarks will be spread upon the record. For what purpose does the gentleman Representative Sturla seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On House Bill 111, Amendment 6310, my button malfunction, I'd like to be recorded in the positive.
The remarks of the gentleman will be spread across the record. Chair recognizes gentleman Representative Bradford, who calls up Amendment A06705, which the clerk shall read.
This is Amendment A06705, deeming withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the Title 51, Part 5, Veterans Preference Military Leave.
On that question, the chair recognizes the gentleman Representative Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, under the law of unintended consequences, these regulations that would be withdrawn potentially would include veterans' preference in employment, civil service examinations, public works contracts, and the licensing and certification exemptions provided to veterans for military service, education, training, and service. I think, again, these are best left in regulation. I think they're serving our Commonwealth and our veterans well. I would also say, as a matter of commentary, and I very much like and respect the lady, and I know what her purpose here is, but it seems as though some are very confident in this legislature to immediately take up passing legislation that will enact legislation that we have in the past, and better to implement it than the statutes that are in place. I would remind this body, just as a matter of caution, we have one constitutionally required bill that we must pass every year. It's called the budget. Our track record in that regard would leave some of these folks whose employment, veterans benefits and such that could be in peril. They may wisely realize that regulations may not be the best thing, but there's not always a bad regulation, and we would be wise to look where we cut, because, again, that law of unintended consequences. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair thanks the gentleman and recognizes the gentlelady from York, Representative Keefer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, this amendment runs counter to the purpose of the bill. This would prevent, we are trying to prevent agencies from promulgating regulations not specifically authorized in the statute. So I would ask for a no vote. Thank you.
On the question, those in favor shall vote aye, those opposed nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? The clerk will record the vote. Yeas are 76, nays are 99. The amendment fails. The chair recognizes the gentleman, Representative Bradford, who calls up Amendment A06706, which the clerk shall read.
This is Amendment A06706, deemed withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the Title 51, Part 6, various veterans benefit programs.
It's the understanding of the chair that the gentleman, Representative Bradford, wishes to withdraw this amendment. Thank you. Chair recognizes the gentleman, Representative Bradford, again for Amendment A06707, which the clerk shall read.
This amendment A06707, deemed withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the Title 23, Domestic Relations.
Is the gentleman withdrawing this amendment as well?
Unfortunately not, Mr. Speaker.
Well, unfortunately not. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. These regulations particularly protect Pennsylvania's most vulnerable population, our children, from things like child abuse and child neglect. Again, I realize the legislature, some views, is best positioned to write these regulations, but I think until such time, it may make sense to keep these regulations in place to protect our children. Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentleman. On the question, recognizes the gentlelady from York County, Representative Keefer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, this bill is not repealing any regulations. It's just putting it back into the legislature. So any regulation that has a $1 million impact or greater across the Commonwealth as determined by the IFO would have to receive a concurrent resolution in both the House and the Senate. This amendment specifically is not necessary. It runs counter to the bill. I would ask for a no vote. Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentlelady. And on the question, those in favor of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? Clerk will record the vote. The yeas are 74, the nays are 101. The amendment fails. The chair is going to recognize the gentleman from Chester, Representative Hennessy, who is a very important point to raise under unanimous consent. The gentleman is in order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to take this opportunity to say I'm pleased and proud to, go ahead.
You will all be happier if you would give this gentleman your ear for just a moment. Representative Hennessy, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know I looked much too young to be making this kind of an announcement, but I am pleased and proud to tell the House that 9 days ago, on April 21st, my wife Carol and I became grandparents for the first time. Thank you. Our younger daughter, Elizabeth, gave birth to our grandson, Derek Connor Bamford. On the medical front, father, mother, and son are doing well, and the grandparents are all ecstatic. Thank you.
Congratulations and thank you. And was I right? The chair now recognizes the gentleman, Representative Bradford, no relation, for Amendment A6708, which the clerk shall read.
This amendment A06708, deemed withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the Title IV Gaming.
The gentleman, Representative Bradford, is recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment, 6708, again, deals with the implementation of Pennsylvania's gaming law, in particular making sure that we have the most highest ethical standards among those operating and maintaining and operating our casinos. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the gentlelady from York County, Representative Keefer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask members for a no vote on this. Again, it runs counter to the intent of the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On the question, those in favor of the amendment shall vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? The clerk will record the vote. The yeas are 69, the nays are 106. The amendment fails. Chair recognizes the gentleman, Representative Bradford, who calls up. I want to express thanks to the gentleman, Representative Hennessy, since he announced that his grandchild's last name is Bradford. The gentleman, Mr. Bradford, who's present, has had enough inspiration to withdraw all your remaining amendments? Oh. Just this one. We already established it was no relation. You weren't paying attention. Not to worry. Chair recognizes the gentlelady, Representative Kruger-Branicki, who calls up Amendment A06711, which was, clerk shall read.
This amendment A06711, deemed withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under Title 18, Chapter 30, Human Trafficking.
Chair recognizes the gentlelady on the amendment. You may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, this amendment excludes regulations adopted and promulgated under the human trafficking provisions of Title 18 from the new Section 5.3, which are regulations deemed withdrawn. It was not long ago that we stood on this House floor together in a bipartisan way to talk about the issue of human trafficking in Pennsylvania. This issue is too important for the victims and survivors to wait for the legislative calendar to come up and to address these regulations. Right now, the state police, the Office of the Attorney General, and PCCD have the ability to move forward in combating human trafficking in Pennsylvania, and if adopted without this amendment, this bill would prohibit that.
Chair thanks the lady and recognizes the gentlelady from York County, Representative Keefer, on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, given the fact that this bill is not taking away any regulations, all of those agencies may continue to operate as they currently do under the law. This amendment specifically runs counter to the intent of this bill, and I'm asking for a no vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On the question of the amendment, those in favor shall vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? Members will, the clerk shall record the vote. The yeas are 82, the nays are 93. The amendment fails. Chair recognizes the gentleman, Representative Bradford, who calls up Amendment A06713, which the clerk shall read.
This is Amendment A06713, deemed withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the Title 18, Chapter 31, Sexual Offenses.
It's the understanding of the chair that Representative Bradford has had another moment of clarity and has withdrawn his amendment. Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the gentleman, Representative Bradford, again for Amendment A06714, which the clerk shall read.
This Amendment A06714, deemed withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the Title 18, Chapter 32, Abortion.
On that question, the chair recognizes the gentleman, Representative Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 6714 talks about those regulations that are promulgated and how abortion procedures are performed here in Pennsylvania. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair thanks the gentleman and recognizes the gentlelady from York County, Representative Keefer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask the members for a no vote on this. This amendment runs counter to the bill. It is not necessary, so I would like a no vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On the question of the amendment, those in favor shall vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? Clerk will record the vote. The yeas are 61, the nays are 114. The amendment fails. Chair recognizes the gentleman Representative Bradford for Amendment A06715, which the clerk shall read.
This Amendment A06715, deem withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the Title 18, Chapter 55, Cruelty to Animals.
Chair recognizes the gentleman Representative Bradford on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, under unintended consequences, these regulations are particularly for the protection of Pennsylvania's animals, and again, I don't think the intent of these regulations was to go after this area of our law. Thank you so much.
On the question, the chair recognizes the gentlelady from York County, Representative Keefer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask members for a no vote on this amendment. It runs counter to the intent of the bill, again, allowing agencies to act outside of what the statute specifically authorizes. So I would ask members for a no vote on this. Thank you.
On the question, those in favor shall vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? The clerk will record the vote. The yeas are 75, the nays are 100. The amendment fails. The chair recognizes the gentleman Representative Bradford, who calls up Amendment A06716, which the clerk shall read.
This is Amendment A06716, deem withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the Title 18, Chapter 57, wiretapping.
On the question, the chair recognizes the gentleman Representative Bradford.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. This amendment particularly protects those regulations that protect our civil liberties under the wiretapping and electronic surveillance provisions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On the question, the chair recognizes the gentlelady from York County, Representative Keefer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I would ask members for a no vote on this. It runs counter to the intent of the bill. Thank you.
On the question, those in favor shall vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? The clerk will record the vote. On the question, the yeas are 72, the nays are 103. The amendment fails. Chair recognizes the gentlelady Representative Kruger-Branicki, who calls up Amendment A06717, which the clerk shall read.
This is Amendment A06717, deem withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the Title 18, Chapter 61, firearms.
On that question, the chair recognizes the gentlelady.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment excludes regulations adopted and promulgated under Chapter 61 of Title 18 regarding firearms and other dangerous articles from new Section 5.3 regulations deemed withdrawn. Without this amendment, this bill would negatively impact the ability of the state police and their in their ability to protect confidentiality of all records and data, including the data that protects our first responders. It prohibits their ability to enact new regulations around guns, bombs, and explosives. We just finished 2 weeks of bipartisan hearings from the Judiciary Committee on common sense gun safety regulations. Let's not impact our first responders by passing this bill without this amendment.
I'm sorry, the chair is trying to get organized here. We'll be at ease for just 30 seconds. Chair thanks the House for its patience and recognizes a gentleman from, oh my gosh, it became busy up here. We have a request from the minority whip that Representative Tina Davis be placed on leave for the balance of the day. Without objection, that leave is granted. We have also a request from the minority whip that Representative Ed Nielsen be placed on leave for the balance of the day. Without objection, that is granted. The minority whip is recognized once again to request that the gentleman, Representative Matsey, be placed on leave for the balance of the day. Without objection, that leave is also granted. Representative Keefer, I'm sorry for this long interruption, but on the question of the amendment, you are now in order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask members for a no vote on this amendment. This bill would not roll back any current regulations as they are written and implemented. This amendment is unnecessary, and I would ask for a no vote. Thank you.
Chair thanks the lady. On the question, those in favor of the amendment shall vote aye. Those opposed, nay. The members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? Clerk will record the vote. The yeas are 68, the nays are 104. The amendment fails. Chair recognizes the gentleman, Representative Bradford. A06718 is called up, which the clerk shall read.
This amendment A06718, deemed withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the Medical Marijuana Act.
On that question, the chair recognizes the gentleman, Representative Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 6718, again, hopes to secure those regulations that after this body in a bipartisan and rather historic way brought medical marijuana to the people of Pennsylvania, has used to promulgate regulations, including those that have been recommended by the Department of Health and the recommendations of the Medical Marijuana Advisory Board. Rather than taking a potential step backward, Pennsylvania should embrace these regulations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair thanks the gentleman, and on the question recognizes the gentlelady from York County, Representative Keefer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask members for a no vote on this amendment. Again, we're not rolling back any current regulations. It's just having those regulations go through the General Assembly that have $1 million impact or greater on the Commonwealth. Again, I would ask members for a no vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair thanks the lady and recognize the minority whip who asked for a leave for the balance of the day for Representative Dan Deasy. Without objection, that leave is granted. On the amendment, those in favor shall vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Clerk, record the vote. The yeas are 66, the nays are 105. The amendment fails. Chair recognizes the gentleman Representative Bradford who calls up Amendment A06719, which the clerk shall read.
This Amendment A06719, deemed withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the Election Code.
Another moment of clarity for Representative Bradford. God bless you. He has withdrawn his amendment. The chair again recognizes Representative Bradford on A06720, which the clerk shall read.
This Amendment A06720, deemed withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the Title 65 Ethics Lobbying Sunshine Act.
On that question, the chair recognizes the gentleman Representative Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I know there may be some confusion. There was actually a list provided to the Speaker where these two amendments were withdrawn. So if you would, Mr. Speaker, 6719 and 6720 were withdrawn. If you would take a look at that list.
Well, that's very encouraging, Representative Bradford. And I wish you now bon voyage. I think that concludes your amendments for this particular bill. But we shall auf Wiedersehen until we meet again. The chair recognizes the gentleman, Representative McCarter, who calls up A06721, which the clerk shall read.
This Amendment A06721, deemed withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the Public School Code.
The chair recognizes Mr. McCarter on the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And again, I'll be very brief on this, that obviously this under the school code, that we would want to make sure that we have protected those particular promulgations, that regulations that have been carried out, so that grandson or grandchild Bradford will be well taken care of when they enter the public school system.
Chair thanks the gentleman, and on the question recognizes the gentlelady from York County, Representative Keefer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask members for a no vote on this amendment. It is not necessary, given the fact, again, that we are not pulling back any current regulations as they exist. Again, I would ask for a no vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair thanks the lady. On the question, those in favor shall vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? Clerk will record the vote. The yeas are 68, the nays are 103. The amendment fails. Chair recognizes Representative McCarter, who calls up A06722, which the clerk shall read.
This Amendment A06722, deemed withdrawal provisions not applicable to regulations promulgated under the Title III Agriculture.
On the question, the chair recognizes the gentleman, Representative McCarter.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. And again, this one simply, again, excludes regulations adopted and promulgated under the agriculture section of Title III.
On the question, the chair recognizes the gentlelady from York County, Representative Keefer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask members for a no vote on this amendment. It is not necessary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On the question, those in favor shall vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? Representative Rapp, Representative Roy. Clerk will record the vote. Yeas are 65, nays are 106. The amendment falls. And the chair would like to advise Representative Daly that A06726 is out of order because the amendments it would combine have all been defeated, and it violates our rule about bringing up the question a second time. Chair recognizes Representative Carroll, who calls up Amendment A06834, which the clerk shall read. The chair thanks the gentleman, Representative Carroll, who has withdrawn that amendment. So the question before the House is, will the House agree to the bill? Agreed to. The bill as amended will be reprinted. Let me modify that. While it's correct that the bill has been agreed to a second time, the bill does not need to be reprinted because it was not amended.
One more bill for the evening. Representative Phillips Hill calls up House Bill 209. And the clerk will read a summary of the underlying bill, 209.
This bill establishes an office of the repealer.
And Representative Warren is on the House floor. Without objection, he will be placed back on the master roll.